days can be a nightmare. But tonight, a deep dive into why. Why have the friendly skies been replaced by baggage fees and endless delays, small seats and big tempers? As Josh Mankiewicz learned, it has a lot to do with cash.
If you've flown anywhere lately, you've probably seen it, maybe lived through it.
What are you paying for exactly? This? Paying to be delayed 6 hours and have a miserable day?
Please note your seat.
Air travel these days seems less like an adventure and more like a battle.
I've just seen people screaming at people, like just throwing things.
There's no food, there's no service or anything. They don't care. It's like you're on your own.
For many traveling Americans, one moment crystallized all that pent-up frustration.
Oh my God, look at what you did to him!
On April 9th of this year, a plane load of appalled passengers watched as Dr. David Dow was dragged off a United flight to free up his seat for an airline employee. United apologized, but not before some serious customer anger was unleashed.
We're all Dr. Dow. It could have been any one of us.
Bill McGee spent 7 years working in the airline industry. Now he's an aviation advisor to Consumers Union.
The airlines are the ones.
This year he testified before Congress about the way airlines treat their customers.
It's not being glib, and it's not trying to take a cheap shot to say that we're being treated like boxes.
Like cargo.
Yes, those of us sitting in the back.
It wasn't always like that. What we're seeing now was put in motion in 1978. That year, the airlines became the first U.S. industry ever to be deregulated by the federal government. It was President Carter's idea. The rules that govern routes, schedules, and fares were abolished.
We were going to have an open market where competition would rule, and the winners would win and the losers would lose, and consumers would benefit.
The fierce competition that followed drove down ticket prices, but it also forced many carriers out of business.
Now, in fact, we have fewer airlines and less competition. And there's this level of arrogance that people are not being treated well because the airlines can get away with it.
Today, 4 airlines, American, United, Delta, and Southwest, control 80% of the market. They'll take your money, but they wouldn't take our questions. All of them passed up the chance to be interviewed for this story. Which is too bad. We wanted to ask them about this. It's called the Contract of Carriage, and every airline has one. Your ticket may look like a single piece of paper or a phone screen, but when you buy it, you're also signing a document you've probably never seen.
You're agreeing to a contract that could be 80 pages thick, is one-sided, completely biased in favor of the airlines, and if you don't like it, don't fly.
For example, times shown on tickets, timetables, published schedules, or elsewhere are not guaranteed. In other words, if your flight's delayed, which happens about 20% of the time, it's not their problem.
There's a dirty little secret in the airline industry, and that is that all passengers are not created equal. If I'm in seat 24A and you're in seat 24B right next to me, and now our flight is canceled.
We're not equal?
No, we're not equal. I may have paid $300 more for my seat, and therefore I'm going to get on another flight before you are.
Your attention, please.
If you do fly, you've probably felt the sting of all those fees the airlines now charge. And if you've ever wondered who inspired them to charge more, here's your guy.
You were maybe the most hated airline executive in the country.
I think that's true. I may still be.
Ben Baldanza made his name as CEO of Spirit Airlines. Starting in 2007, he dramatically reduced ticket prices while stripping away just about every creature comfort associated with flying.
Do I have you to blame for all those little charges on planes, like bags and a better seat and all the other stuff you now charge for that you didn't used to charge for?
Well, Spirit was one of the first to sort of start the unbundling process.
What he calls unbundling, the rest of us might call nickel and diming. Ben and Spirit help make that a part of flying.
So if I want a Coke on Spirit, I'm paying for that.
Yeah, and if you want a Coke in the airport, you're going to pay for it too.
And if I want to use the overhead bin, I'm going to pay for that.
Well, if you want to bring a big bag that needs an overhead bin.
What's next, pay toilets?
Well, probably not.
Unbundling worked, despite ranking lowest in consumer satisfaction. Spirit soon had the highest profit margin in the airline industry. Major airlines noticed, and they started unbundling too. That began when fuel costs were soaring. In recent years, fuel costs have dropped, but those fees keep going up. Last year, U.S. carriers took in $2.9 billion in change fees and another $4.2 billion for checking bags. And of course, add-on fees are just one way airlines put the squeeze on travelers. Back in the mid-1980s, you could find seats, coach seats, on major U.S. carriers that were as much as 36 inches apart. Since then, as Americans were getting larger, the airlines made their coach seats smaller and closer together in an effort to get as many people as possible onto the plane. By the mid-90s, 34 inches was the best you could do. Today, we're squeezing into seats that are 31 inches apart. Unless you're flying Spirit, in which case you've got 28 inches to maneuver. Assuming you have a seat at all. Last year, U.S. Airlines bumped more than 40,000 paying customers against their will. The airlines regularly sell more seats than they have as part of a strategy they call capacity control. The industry works today because of overbooking?
No, because of capacity control.
Okay, but it also is intertwined with a philosophy that we cannot let the plane leave with any extra seats.
Well, it also means we fly the airplanes more hours per day, and it also means we sit the plane on the ground less time, which is why there's all the tension to board quickly and that countdown clock. It's all of that.
There are now 5,000 fewer flights each day than 10 years ago. With fewer flights and fewer choices, ticket prices nationwide have actually ticked up. Maybe it's no surprise then that the cost and the pressure are ticking people off. And let's face it, as much as we all love to hate the airlines, sometimes the enemy is us.
He's walking down the aisle drinking a beer without a shirt on. I mean, come on.
Former flight attendant Sean Kathleen now runs an online forum called Passenger Shaming. Passengers send her the pics. The guy applying deodorant, the guy sleeping without a shirt, the guy in the leather outfit with a leash, and feet, feet, feet. How many of the problems that you see could be done away with if airlines would stop serving alcohol?
A lot of it.
However,
If there were never alcohol served, the fare would be higher too, right? And so it's because the airlines make money selling alcohol on the plane.
money remains the name of the game, even as chaos in the air unfolded this spring. Airline stocks went up.
We can't make the airlines nicer, but we can make them more fair.
Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey believes that after 40 years, the airlines could use some re-regulation. Every couple of years, there's a new incident. It gets on the news. Airlines get called on the carpet here in Washington, and the airlines say, "We promise, we'll clean up our act." And then nothing ever changes. Is anything ever going to change?
Well, in the FAA reauthorization bill, which is now moving through the Senate, we now have language, which we have included, that will give the consumer protections.
Senator Markey, a Democrat, along with Senator Roger Wicker, a Republican, have added an amendment to a bill requiring that the government set reasonable fees for checked baggage, itinerary changes, and seat selection. The airlines contribute a lot of money. They got a lot of lobbyists, and they've done a pretty good job of heading off anything legislatively that would actually prescribe their behavior.
The airline lobbyists have done a great job in ensuring that consumers have no protections. But we've reached a boiling point, and we're now about to engage in a mighty political battle.
But until then, here's the story of air travel in 2017. Money talks. All others fly coach, in the middle seat. And in the air, the smell of frustration and cheap scotch. If you do feel squeezed by the system, don't take out your anger on another person. That's the spirit.
The government is paying attention to some consumer complaints about the airlines. This week, the feds fined 3 carriers for violations, including failing to help passengers with disabilities and failing to make timely refunds. Coming up,